My name is Avery Collins. I'm 19 years old, and for most of my life, I thought love was something you had to earn by being obedient. In my house, there was only one correct way to breathe, speak, dress, study, plan, and exist. My parents' way. My father believed affection made children weak. My mother believed reputation mattered more than truth. And my older sister, Madison, 23, was their proof that their system worked. Madison was beautiful, polished, ambitious, and cruel in the quiet way people rarely notice from the outside. She had perfect grades, perfect clothes, perfect manners at dinner, and the perfect ability to make me feel small with one glance. I was the problem child. Not because I got into trouble, not because I failed school, not because I was wild or reckless. I was the problem because I asked why. Then I met Ethan Miller. Ethan was 19 too, soft-spoken in a way that made people underestimate him. He didn't come from warmth either. His parents were controlling, frightening, and obsessed with appearances. When we first started dating, he used to apologize before asking for anything, even something as simple as borrowing my charger. We were careful. We were young, but not careless. Still, life happened. When Ethan told me he was pregnant, his hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the test. I remember the bathroom light flickering above us, the cheap plastic stick on the sink, the silence pressing between us like a third person. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I hated that those were his first words. I took his face in my hands and said, "Don't apologize for our baby." Was I scared? Completely. I was 19. I had classes, a part-time job, barely any savings, and parents who treated independence like betrayal. But I loved him, and I was not going to run. Telling my parents was worse than I imagined. My father stood so still, I thought he hadn't heard me. Then his face hardened. "You have destroyed your future," he said. My mother covered her mouth like I had confessed to a crime. Madison leaned against the kitchen counter with that tiny smile she always wore when I was bleeding emotionally, and she wanted front row seats. My father gave me the choice, like he was offering mercy. Leave him, or leave this family. I looked at my mother, hoping for 1 second she would be my mother instead of his echo. She only cried and said, "You'll regret this for the rest of your life." Madison laughed under her breath. That was when something inside me went cold and clear. "I choose Ethan," I said. My father cut me off financially that night. No inheritance, no support. No daughter, apparently. Madison told me not to come crawling back when that boy ruined me. I packed what I could carry. I thought leaving would feel dramatic, like slamming a door in a movie. It didn't. It felt small, quiet, like walking out of a house that had never really been mine. The person who saved us was my best friend's older brother, Jake. Jake owned a small apartment building on the edge of town. Nothing fancy. Peeling paint, old pipes, thin walls. But when he heard what happened, he handed me a key and said, "Rent what you can. Pay when you can. Just keep him safe." No lecture, no judgment. Just help. Ethan moved in with one duffel bag and eyes full of fear. He left his parents a letter, turned off his phone, and never looked back. He didn't tell them about the pregnancy. He said if they knew, they would drag him home and call it love. So we started over. The apartment was tiny. The bedroom barely fit a mattress. The kitchen table wobbled. The heater made a banging sound at night, like someone trapped inside the walls. But it was ours. For a little while, that was enough. I worked extra shifts. Ethan looked for part-time work, even though I told him to rest. We made grocery lists down to the cent. We celebrated tiny victories, a secondhand crib listing, a doctor's appointment that went well. 1 full week without crying. Then, my family came back into our lives like a storm forcing its way under the door. I was at work when Ethan called me sobbing. My parents had shown up at the apartment. They banged on the door, shouted through it, called him a gold digger, a manipulator, a trap. My mother screamed that if he had any decency, he would leave me before he destroyed me completely. Ethan didn't open the door. That probably saved him. I called my father, shaking with rage, and told him if any of them came near Ethan again, I would call the police. He laughed. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just enough to remind me he still thought I was a child. "When he leaves you," he said, "Don't come home." But they didn't stop. Jake warned them once. After that, he said he would call the police himself if they stepped onto the property again. So they changed tactics. They started finding Ethan outside, at the grocery store, near the bus stop, once outside the clinic. At first, Ethan thought he was being paranoid. Then Madison appeared beside the produce section and said, "Still pretending this baby is a blessing?" That night, Ethan sat on the bathroom floor, arms wrapped around himself. "I'm scared to go outside," he whispered. I had never felt so powerless. I wanted to be everywhere at once. I wanted to stand between him and the world. I wanted to make my family vanish from our lives like they had once tried to erase me from theirs. But I had work, I had school, I had bills, I had a boyfriend who flinched every time someone knocked. And I had a sister who seemed to enjoy every second of it. Madison had always hated sharing anything with me. Attention, praise, space, air. But this was different. This wasn't sibling rivalry. This was punishment. I didn't understand why. I had left. I had chosen. I wasn't asking them for money, forgiveness, or permission. So why were they still trying to destroy us? The answer came later. And by the time I understood it, everything we loved was already gone. Looking back now, I think there was a moment when the universe tried to warn me. Not with anything dramatic. No thunderstorm, no terrifying phone call in the middle of the night. Just a feeling. A terrible, creeping feeling that something was coming for us. A week before everything collapsed, Ethan started checking the apartment locks 3 or 4 times before bed. I would wake up at 2 in the morning and find him standing near the front door in one of my oversized hoodies, staring through the peephole into the hallway. "You okay?" I'd whisper. He always lied. "Yeah, just couldn't sleep." But I knew better. Fear changes people slowly at first. It settles into the body like cold weather. Ethan stopped humming while cooking. He stopped talking to the baby when we lay in bed together. He startled whenever phones rang unexpectedly. And my family kept pushing. Madison created fake social media accounts just to message him cruel things. My mother left voicemails crying dramatically about how Ethan had poisoned me against them. My father sent me one final text. "You still have time to fix your mistake." I blocked every one of them. I thought that would matter. It didn't. One afternoon, Ethan grabbed my wrist before I left for class. "Can you stay home today?" he asked quietly. I checked the clock. I already had one professor threatening to fail me because of missed attendance. "Baby, I can't," I said carefully. "Just a few hours, okay? Jake's downstairs if you need anything." Ethan tried to smile. That fake little smile still haunts me. "Okay," he whispered. I kissed his forehead before leaving. I didn't know it would be the last normal moment of our lives. Around noon, my phone started vibrating during class. One missed call. Then another. Then 6 more. All from Ethan. I remember the exact sensation that hit my chest, like my heart knew before my brain did. I ran out of class and called him back immediately. No answer. Again. Nothing. Then Jake called. "Avery," he said, breathing hard. "You need to get to St. Mary's Hospital right now." The world stopped. I don't remember leaving campus. I don't remember driving. I only remember my hands shaking so violently on the steering wheel I nearly crashed twice. At the hospital, Jake met me near the emergency entrance. His face told me everything before he opened his mouth. "No," I said immediately. No. Where's Ethan?" Jake tried to steady me, but I shoved past him. I found Ethan in a hospital bed, with bruises blooming across his arms and neck. His lip was split. One side of his face was swollen. But none of that was what destroyed me. It was the emptiness in his eyes. He looked at me like he was underwater. "Avery," he whispered. Then he started crying. Not loudly, just silently, like his body didn't even have enough strength left for sound. A doctor pulled me aside afterward. "There are sentences that divide your life into before and after. I'm sorry. They couldn't save the baby." I think part of me died in that hallway. The doctor kept talking. Internal injuries, trauma, complications. Then came the second blow. "There's significant damage," she said gently. "It may be extremely difficult for him to carry a pregnancy again." I stared at her without understanding. The words didn't fit together.
Difficult. Damage.
Again, like language itself had broken. When I finally went back into Ethan's room, he looked terrified to even meet my eyes. "I'm sorry," he whispered again. Again. Even then, after everything done to him, he was apologizing. I sat beside him and held his hand so tightly my fingers hurt. "You have nothing to apologize for," I said, but my voice sounded destroyed. Later I learned exactly what happened. My parents had contacted Ethan's parents. They told them everything. The pregnancy. The apartment. Our address. They knew Ethan had run away from them. They knew he was terrified of them. And they handed him right back. Ethan's parents showed up while he was alone. They forced their way into the apartment. They screamed at him, cornered him, grabbed him when he tried to get away. His father shoved him into the kitchen counter. His mother called him disgusting, weak, shameful. They tried to drag him out of the apartment. When he resisted, things turned violent. A neighbor heard screaming and called the police. But by then, it was too late. Too late. That phrase became the soundtrack of my life. Too late to protect him. Too late to save our baby. Too late to undo what my family had started. Ethan's parents were arrested that same day. I wish I could say that brought me satisfaction. It didn't. Nothing did. I confronted my parents 2 days later. I should never have gone alone. The moment my mother opened the door, she burst into tears. "We didn't know," she kept saying. "We didn't think they'd do something like this." My father tried to sound reasonable, which somehow made it worse. "We were trying to help you see reality." Reality. Our child was dead. Ethan was traumatized. And they called it reality. Then Madison opened her mouth. "You're acting like this is entirely their fault," she said coldly. "You made stupid choices too." Something inside me snapped. I don't remember deciding to trash the house. One second, I was standing there shaking. The next, I was throwing framed photos against walls so hard the glass exploded. I ripped paintings down, smashed dishes, flipped chairs. My mother screamed my name while my father threatened to call the cops. Then Madison shoved me. Actually shoved me. And she hissed, "You ruined your own life, Avery." I hit her. Hard. Years of humiliation, resentment, rage, grief, all of it came out at once. She hit back. Then I completely lost control. I don't remember how many punches landed. I only remember my father trying to pull me away while Madison screamed. And honestly, the worst part is, I still don't fully regret it. The police arrived before things got worse. I was arrested for assault. My first time ever sitting in the back of a police car. And the entire time, there was only one thought in my head. Ethan is alone. Jake bailed me out before midnight. He didn't lecture me, didn't ask questions. He just handed me a coffee and drove me straight back to the hospital. When I walked into Ethan's room again, he was awake but staring blankly at the television. I sat beside him carefully. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then he leaned weakly against my shoulder. And for the first time since the doctor told us about the baby, I cried. Not angry tears. Not violent tears. The kind that leave you empty afterward. "I should have stayed home," I whispered. Ethan shook his head immediately. "No," he said softly. "Don't do that to yourself." But I already was. Because love makes you protective. And guilt makes you cruel to yourself. I stayed in that hospital room for days afterward. Ethan barely spoke. Sometimes he stared at the ceiling for hours without moving. Sometimes he woke up shaking from nightmares he couldn't explain. I would hold his hand and pretend I wasn't falling apart too. Meanwhile, my parents suddenly wanted forgiveness. After extended family learned what happened, the perfect image they spent decades building cracked open overnight. Relatives stopped inviting them places. Friends distanced themselves. People whispered. And suddenly, they were sorry. They offered money.
Therapy.
Help with medical bills. Anything to get me to answer their calls. But every apology sounded rotten. Because apologies mean nothing when the damage is permanent. Our baby was gone. The future we imagined was gone. And Ethan still looked afraid every time someone entered the room unexpectedly. One night, while he slept beside me in the hospital bed, I realized something horrifying. I no longer missed my family at all. I only wish they had left us alone from the beginning. People think grief is loud. They imagine screaming, collapsing, dramatic breakdowns in grocery store aisles or funerals soaked in rain. But the worst grief is usually quiet. It's Ethan, staring at a bowl of soup until it goes cold because he forgot he was supposed to eat it. It's me waking up at 4 a.m, reaching toward his stomach, before remembering there's nothing there anymore. It's an unopened box of baby clothes hidden in the back of our closet, because neither of us can survive throwing it away. After Ethan was discharged from the hospital, we went back to the apartment, but it no longer felt like home. The kitchen counter where he'd been shoved still had a crack in the wood. One cabinet door hung crooked from the struggle. Even the walls felt wrong. Ethan froze the second we walked inside. I saw panic flood his face so fast, it scared me. "We don't have to stay here," I told him immediately. "But moving costs money, and trauma doesn't pause long enough for people to recover financially first." So we stayed. At least temporarily. Jake changed the locks himself. He installed cameras outside the building and refused to let us pay him back. My best friend Liam started checking in almost every night with takeout containers and awkward jokes that were never really funny but somehow still helped. Those two carried us more than they'll ever understand. Because Ethan and I were barely functioning. He stopped speaking for days at a time. Not intentionally. Words just seemed too heavy for him now. Sometimes I'd find him curled up on the bathroom floor, hugging his knees, staring at nothing. Sometimes he'd flinch when I touched him unexpectedly, then immediately apologize like he had done something wrong. That apology nearly killed me every time. One afternoon, I came home early from work and heard soft crying through the bedroom door. Ethan was sitting on the floor beside the bed, holding one of the ultrasound pictures. His shoulders were shaking violently. "I didn't protect them," he whispered when he noticed me standing there. I crossed the room so fast I nearly fell. "No," I said firmly, kneeling in front of him. "Don't ever blame yourself for what monsters did." "But I should have fought harder." "You were attacked." His face crumpled. "I couldn't save our baby." Neither could I. But I couldn't say that out loud because if I admitted how helpless I felt, I was afraid we would both drown in it. So I held him until he fell asleep against my chest. And then I cried silently so he wouldn't hear me. I started therapy a few weeks later because I realized something dangerous about myself. I was angry all the time. Not ordinary anger either. Violent anger. Every time my phone buzzed with another message from my parents, I imagined smashing it against a wall. Every time I saw Madison's name online, I remembered the feeling of my fist hitting her face and felt satisfaction instead of guilt. That terrified me. My therapist told me trauma often turns grief into rage, because rage feels powerful while grief feels helpless. I didn't feel powerful. I felt poisoned. The legal process dragged on forever. Ethan's parents were charged with home invasion, assault, battery, false imprisonment, and involuntary manslaughter of an unborn child. Hearing those words in court made me physically sick. Meanwhile, I tried desperately to get my own parents charged too. Because in my eyes, they were guilty. Maybe they hadn't touched Ethan themselves, but they had handed him to the people who did. They knew what his parents were like. They knew. But money protects people. Connections protect people. My parents hired expensive lawyers who painted everything as a misunderstanding. They claimed they were only trying to reconnect Ethan with his family. They acted devastated, horrified, innocent. And somehow, it worked. No charges. I remember walking out of the courthouse feeling numb while my father called after me in the parking lot. "Avery, please." I kept walking. My mother cried loudly enough for strangers to stare. Madison didn't say a word. She just looked at me with hatred so intense it almost impressed me. Like somehow I had ruined their lives by refusing to forgive them. The extended family cut them off completely after the truth spread. Apparently, my parents had spent weeks pretending I had abandoned them for some boy and become unstable. Then the hospital reports surfaced. Then the police records. Then neighbors started talking. Suddenly, the story changed. My aunt from Seattle called me sobbing after hearing everything. "I'm so sorry we believed them," she said. That apology mattered more than she probably realized. Because for months, I had felt invisible. Like Ethan and I were screaming underwater while everyone debated whether we deserved saving. Slowly, painfully, things began shifting. Not healing, exactly. More like surviving, with slightly less pain. Ethan started therapy too. The first few sessions were brutal. He would come home emotionally exhausted and disappear into the shower for nearly an hour afterward. But little by little, tiny parts of him returned. One night, I caught him humming softly while making tea. I almost burst into tears hearing it. Another day, he asked if we could take a walk together around the block. The first 10 minutes, his hands shook the entire time. By the end, he was holding mine normally again. Progress looked so small from the outside, but to me, it felt monumental. There were setbacks too. God, there were so many setbacks. A cashier asking if we had children once sent Ethan into a panic attack so severe, we had to leave the store immediately. A pregnant stranger smiling at us in a cafe caused him to lock himself in the bathroom afterward. There were nights he woke up gasping from nightmares about his parents dragging him away, while I couldn't reach him in time. And every single time, I would hold him and whisper the same thing. You're safe now. Even when I wasn't sure either of us truly believed it. About 6 months after the hospital, Ethan finally asked me the question we had both been avoiding. Do you regret choosing me? I stared at him in disbelief. He sat at the edge of the bed, refusing to meet my eyes. You lost your family, he said quietly. Your education is falling apart. Your future changed because of me. I crossed the room immediately. My future changed because my family was abusive, I said. Not because I loved you. His eyes filled with tears. I can't give you children anymore. That sentence shattered something inside me. I took his face in both hands. You are not valuable because of what your body can do, I told him. You are valuable because you are Ethan, because you're kind, because you survived, because I love you. He broke down crying after that. Not the silent crying from the hospital. Real crying. Messy, painful, human. And strangely enough, that was the moment I realized he might actually survive this. Not quickly. Not perfectly. But eventually. As for me, I stopped answering my parents completely. No calls. No texts. No birthday cards stuffed with checks. Nothing. Because reconciliation without accountability is just manipulation wearing a softer voice. And I was finally done being manipulated. Still, some nights I lay awake beside Ethan, wondering who we might have been if people had simply left us alone. Would we have painted a nursery? Would our baby have had Ethan's eyes? Would I still believe family meant safety? Those thoughts never really disappear. You just learn how to carry them without collapsing every time. It's strange how life keeps moving, even after yours feels like it ended. People still go to work. Coffee shops still open at 7 in the morning. Neighbors still complain about parking spaces. Meanwhile, somewhere inside you, there's a version of yourself frozen in a hospital hallway, hearing the worst sentence imaginable. For a long time, that frozen version of me controlled everything. But not forever. A year after my last post online, Ethan's parents were finally sentenced. The trial was brutal. Every detail was dragged into the light. The forced entry, the assault, the injuries, the pregnancy, the loss of our baby. I sat beside Ethan every day in court, holding his hand, while lawyers dissected the worst day of our lives like it was a puzzle to solve. His father never looked remorseful. Not once. Even during sentencing, he sat there with the same cold expression he'd worn in the police photos. His mother cried occasionally, but it felt performative somehow, like she mourned consequences more than harm. The judge didn't seem convinced either. 25 years for Ethan's father. 20 years for his mother. When the sentence was read, the courtroom went silent. I expected relief. Instead, I felt empty. No prison sentence could rewind time. No punishment could give Ethan his laughter back completely. No justice system in the world could return our child. Outside the courthouse, reporters tried asking questions. I ignored all of them. Ethan squeezed my hand once and whispered, "Can we just go home?" So we did. Home was different by then. Not the old apartment. We left that place months earlier after Ethan suffered a panic attack from hearing footsteps outside the door late one night. With help from extended family members, people who finally understood the truth, we moved across the country to start over somewhere nobody knew us. A new state. A new apartment. A new beginning. At first, it felt terrifying. Then, slowly, it started feeling peaceful. Ethan went back to school before I did. I remember how nervous he was on his first day back. He changed outfits 3 times and nearly talked himself into staying home. "What if I can't do this?" he asked. I straightened the collar of his jacket gently. "Then you come home and we try again tomorrow." But he did do it. Not all at once. Just one class at a time. One assignment. One ordinary moment after another. And somewhere during that process, he began returning to himself. The softer version. The brighter version. Not the same Ethan from before. Trauma changes people permanently. But still Ethan. He started smiling more. Sleeping better. Laughing occasionally, without forcing it. The first time I heard him genuinely laugh again, I had to leave the room afterward because I started crying from relief. As for me, I dropped out of school entirely. Not because I gave up. Because survival forced me to rethink everything. One of my uncles overseas found out what happened through relatives and reached out unexpectedly. Unlike my parents, he didn't defend himself first, didn't make excuses. He simply said, "What they did to you was unforgivable." That sentence changed something in me. With help from him and a few other relatives, I started a small business. Nothing glamorous at first, just enough to keep moving forward. Then, somehow, it grew. Slowly.
Messily. Beautifully.
By 25, I was running a company with people who actually respected me. Sometimes I still struggle to believe that version of my life is real. Ethan and I are 25 now. We survived 6 years that honestly should have destroyed us. And somehow, after everything, we still choose each other. Every day. Marriage comes up sometimes. Usually late at night, when we're half asleep, and honest. But there's no dramatic proposal yet. No giant wedding plans taped to refrigerators. We're not rushing anymore. Trauma changes your relationship with time. You stop assuming the future is guaranteed. You start appreciating quiet things instead. Morning coffee together. His hand finding mine automatically during movies. The fact he sleeps through most nights peacefully now. Those things matter more than ceremonies. Kids are harder. We don't avoid the topic completely, but we approach it carefully, like touching a bruise that never fully healed. There are still moments when grief ambushes us out of nowhere. A toddler laughing in a grocery store. A baby blanket in a shop window. A due date that exists only in memory. Sometimes Ethan still breaks down crying unexpectedly. Sometimes I do too. Healing isn't linear. That's the lie nobody tells you. Some wounds close. Others become part of your anatomy. But despite everything, we built a life worth staying for. Liam still checks in constantly, usually by sending stupid memes at 2 in the morning. Jake still acts like my unofficial older brother and threatens anyone who annoys us. Those friendships survived because they were built on love instead of obligation. Unlike family. My parents still contact me. Not as aggressively anymore. Age and social isolation softened them, I think. Or maybe consequences finally did. My mother writes long emails about forgiveness and second chances. My father sends messages pretending enough time has passed to erase accountability. Madison tried contacting me once through a new number. I blocked it without reading past hello. Because here's the truth nobody likes hearing. Some damage cannot be repaired. Some apologies arrive too late. And some people only regret hurting you after it begins hurting them too. Do I hate them? For a long time, yes. Now, I mostly feel tired. They destroyed their relationship with me the moment they decided control mattered more than my safety. The moment they treated Ethan like less than human. The moment they handed our address to people they knew were dangerous. That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice. And choices have consequences. Last month, Ethan and I visited the ocean for the first time since moving. We sat on the sand after sunset, wrapped in one blanket against the cold wind. At one point, he rested his head against my shoulder and said quietly, "Do you think we're going to be okay someday?" I looked at the waves for a long time before answering. Not because I doubted us. because I finally understood something important. Okay doesn't always mean untouched. Sometimes okay means surviving what should have killed you. Sometimes okay means waking up every morning and choosing softness despite everything that tried to make you cruel. So I kissed the top of his head and told him the truth. We already are.